They go by the initials I.C.T, International Computers and Tabulators. And they're very much in the news in Britain these days, with very good reason.
The 1900s were great because they were sort of quite basic machines. Started off in a 1901 that had 16K words, that's 64 kilobytes. So I've got an iPhone in my pocket that's got 1,000,000 times more memory on it than this machine had. It took 16 of us to run it, that was 4 shifts, and 2 tape librarians, and we were just copying tapes.
I think there's such a rich heritage for Fujitsu and the founding companies. So I'm starting with British tabulating machines, where Harold Keane, the chief engineer, was the engineering designer and oversaw development of the bomb, which was an invention which changed the world and had such a big impact. There's just such a rich heritage, and it's really, I feel really proud to work for that company.
My first role was trying to build a model for working out the costs of installing some of these big mainframes in the 1900s. In those days, the early 2900s. And that meant talking to engineers to find out how they did things, what they did, what correlated with what to build the models. And these guys were all ex-Bletchley Park and that sort of era. They were all old guys, and all they wanted to talk about was their experiences, and it just fired me with enthusiasm for what they'd done, what was then total secret.
After the launch in '64, the company set to produce the software, and we had a 1903 at Putney, and the first 1905, and then the first 1907.
I started off as a computer operator, or trainee computer operator. I worked my way up to be a senior computer operator, so I was working on 1901 to start off with. Ended up working on 1903A and 1904. And various other sundry machines.
It's for some reason the company decided it wanted to cover all the I.C.T labels on equipment with ICL labels. And being a student apprentice, I was sort of the bottom end, and so I got a job of going around finding all the bits of kit in Stevenage to stick these ICL labels over the I.C.T labels. I don't think we would ask our apprentices to do that today.
Since I joined, I've always been judged by my merit. I mean, I'm one of the youngest in my team, one of the least experienced, and in development especially, there's so few girls, and it's always been about what you can do and what you can learn and how you can improve, as opposed to any of those little things that might hold you back.
Program development was very different than it is nowadays. Basically the programmers wrote their program as it was punched up on punch cards. Then they put a job into the computer room, and the operators ran the test job on behalf of the programmers, typically producing an error report and some listings. So back to the programmer to correct it and submit it again.
I remember one afternoon where people seemed to be moaning quite a bit about how long it was taking to get things done. That the designer of the P50 processor, which is what's in the 1902s and 3s, came down from his office, hit the pause button on the mainframe, pulled out the timing card, disappeared into his office for about half an hour, then came back and put the board back into the processor, and all of a sudden performance went up about 10%.
So it's been quite an eye-opener today to come here and see some of that old technology that the company developed and the company used, and it's been absolutely amazing hearing some of the stories about the sort of procedures and processes developers would have had to go through back in the 60s. So I'm quite grateful that I'm around today, not then.
When we got to 2970, this had 2 megabytes of RAM. This seemed absolutely enormous to us. We thought this was fantastic. It had a drum that could hold 5 megabytes. I mean, this was just sort of enormous stuff. It was groundbreaking.
We spend so much time now, because I've worked in application development, so much time getting angry at how slow things can be or how long things take, and it's amazing to think that there used to be such a long, convoluted process in trying to use computers before technology caught up with us.
I joined in 1974, so by that time it was ICL, but I didn't join ICL proper. I joined an organisation called Barrick, which was a joint company. It was ICL's service organisation, partly owned by Barclays Bank, partly owned by ICL.
I did realise we were ICL previous to Fujitsu. I didn't realise we were a company called I.C.T before that, and I'm just astounded how many small companies have come into the mix to make us what we are today. And just speaking to some of the chaps, that have been here 40 plus years, and they have nothing bad to say. That's really positive, and I'm glad I've chosen Fujitsu as my career path. Yeah, I'm really proud to say that, actually.
Well, George was what you would consider today as being something at the level of Windows. It would run programs for you, and it would do time sharing between programs, so that if one program was stuck, unable to do something, then George would allow another program to run.
The work that was done then, the coding, is still there. It's deep, deep down in the operating systems of all the computers nowadays, all the little subroutines, all things that these guys invented and spent months and years working on, that we now not only take for granted, but they're embedded in the camera that you're using there.
I worked all the time in development in one way or another, but on a succession of projects, and very varied. I worked on the distributed array processor, then on retail development in the early days when we were just putting the first scanning systems into people like Sainsbury's and Marks and Sparks.
Then I moved into systems programming, did a little bit of stuff that ended up in VME. There was a product that sat over that.
I liked VME, I liked the 2900, it was an absolutely splendid machine. It's probably the last mainframe system that was ever designed. VME in particular is still running today, 40 years on, for heaven's sake. And that's a pretty good record.
Also very proud to have become an ICL Distinguished Engineer Fellow and a Fujitsu Fellow. The company's got a very rich capability. I'm discovering things even now all the time that I just don't know that people are doing, and there's some fantastic stuff that goes on in this company, and find out about it.
I thoroughly enjoyed being a service rep out on the road in my little white van. It's led me to all sorts of places, countries. I've travelled all over the place with ICL and Fujitsu. I'm now putting my son forward to join as a FESL engineer, so hopefully the path will carry on through my son's generation.
It's the people that count. That's all the company's got at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how many buildings you've got and everything else. Your main asset is your people.